Welcome to the Retro Blood.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Retro Blood as we continue this From the Graves month, talking 1980s zombie movies. Up next, if y'all like Tom Atkins being a wild maniac thrill ride cop trying to shoot down slugs and axe murderers, yelling at kids and police officers the whole time. If y'all like teenagers trying to have some sex at some proms. If y'all like frat houses with frat boys getting turned into deadly zombie freaking slugs, demon things. And if you like a love story what ends up with other heroes dying, but at least a couple got together at the end, then this is the review for you, brother, because the Retro Blood is talking all about Night of the Creeps. J. Alison, James Kline, what's happened, Alison? How was your initiation into the Beta House going?
Man, that's a crazy place, that Beta House.
Yeah.
You got that bleach blonde guy who might or might not be a Nazi, I'm not sure. And then you got all these other chicks showing up, and then you got like these two dudes that are not really trying to be part of the Beta House, but they just want to get with this girl.
Yeah.
And it was a wild ride, this movie. This whole thing was
very
wild.
interesting ride. You know what I mean? Like, why was there?
Yes.
The JC character was a little confusing because I know he's the handicapped character, like the friend and everything, but he acted like because he acted like he was like that. He couldn't get laid, even though he had all the game. Very interesting.
Well, maybe he did behind the scenes. Maybe we just didn't see it in the movie. It's not because it's not part of the plot.
Yeah, I did like it though, like this film was saved all by Tom Atkins, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought he was great in this film.
He's great in every film.
Yeah.
Tom Atkins is the coolest dude on the planet. That guy's just fucking cool, and he was really cool in this.
Yeah, I liked it in here. I liked him. Some angry cop, you know what I mean, who's traumatized, and he just wants to blow up slugs, and he was yelling at people the whole time, and wants thrill rides. I liked it. Pretty good.
Yeah.
This was like, I would say, like, in the category of horror movies, like, this was like a fun one, like it wasn't on the level of like the Blob that we did, like I thought the Blob was obviously directed and produced and filmed a lot better, but I thought this one was actually pretty fun, like a kind of like a fun movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I like the slimy slug creatures from outside space. I thought they were very interesting. So we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, this is a little bit different. Yeah, it's a little bit different. There's aliens in this.
Yeah. It's like I said, this month we're going to be doing a little bit different style zombie movies. You know what I mean? Not like your traditional brain eaters and stuff. But all these movies are going to have some tones with zombies, but are just done a little differently. So, at least for the first two, at least. But yeah, I liked it. I thought this movie was pretty fun, and apparently it's one of those movies that at the time didn't really do too well, but it gained like a cult following, like past it and stuff. So
yeah, I feel like we say that a lot.
Yeah.
on movies that we do. It didn't do very well at the box office, but it became a cult film later on.
I mean, the only reason I could think about that was maybe because the market was so saturated with horror films in the 80s. Maybe a lot of them just didn't get by,
Yeah.
Like, or, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just the only thing I could think of.
You had a lot of big movies too.
Yeah.
Well, you have to consider the time. So back in, 81 to 85, 86, it was really uncommon to have a multiplex. It was really uncommon to have a theater that had a bunch of screens in it. Like, now when you go to a movie theater, it has 22 screens. Back then, if a movie theater had 2 screens, it had a lot.
Yeah.
And then around 85 or so, you started seeing like movie theaters with 7 screens. And that was a huge movie theater back then. So, if you have like a movie like, I don't know, we'll say something from around that time. Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you have that movie coming out, you're going to want to play that movie over Night of the Creeps or Dead and Buried from last week or something like that. Top Gun. I think that's a movie that came out in 1986. So if you can get Top Gun, you're going to play that in your single screen movie theater before you're going to play Night of the Creeps.
Yeah.
So all these movies were kind of second choice movies. It's not like they could have Top Gun and then they could have this movie too because they've got 12 screens or 25 screens.
Yeah.
Most movie theaters had 1 or 2 screens, which is why a lot of these movies didn't do very well because they were relegated to the older, grittier downtown movie theaters that people kind of didn't go to necessarily.
Yeah. But fun stuff, a good thing for the invention of VHS and DVDs and Blu-rays and streaming services, so we can watch all this stuff anytime we want to now. Doesn't matter how to be at a movie theater or not. Very fun stuff, like a lot of fun stuff to talk about too when it comes to this movie. I would say this one, I think this one is like Tom Atkins. I think it's one of his not well-known movies he was in, but I still thought he did a very good job in this particular film too. So fun stuff over here.
And we've done once we finish this one, we've done every Tom Atkins horror movie from the 80s except for one.
Yeah, we're still missing The Fog.
Two then. I forgot we haven't done The Fog. He was in The Fog, but he was also in The New Kids, which is a Sean Cunningham movie. And he was in a movie called Ninth Configuration, but I wouldn't really consider that a horror movie.
Yeah, he was all over this man. I was kind of surprised he didn't have sex with anybody in this film, but I did like at the beginning where he saw like he was in a beach, with a bunch of blondes there. So that counts.
Right. That counts.
Speaking of counting, let's get into the history segment that we do every week here on the Retro Blood. The reason that we do it is that we're kind of like a frat house ourselves, Alison. You know what I mean?
Kind of.
We're the beta, the retro beta mix or whatever. You know what I mean?
Okay. And
I'm Brad, the super blonde guy. Why do you think he's a Nazi? Because of the super blonde hair?
because he's like, because he has like his, his dyed blonde hair, and then later on he's wearing like a tank top with like this like Nazi looking logo on it. And
interesting.
But we'll see. Yeah,
very interesting guy. So we do like different tasks around this frat house too. We give everybody assignments, and the assignment that we have this week is talking about pro wrestling that happened on the release date of this movie, Night of the Living Creeps, August 22nd, 1986. All right, and if we travel to the world of world-class championship wrestling, we have a match that aired from the Sportatorium that I watched in Dallas, Texas. And I want to get your thoughts about this. I know you didn't watch the match, Alison. We kind of watched this match right before I did this show, actually. And it's a match between the Dingo Warrior, all right, with his manager at the time, Gary Hart, versus Ravishing Rick Rude, with Percy Pringle as his manager.
Ooh.
So we saw this match between the Dingo Warrior and Rick Rude well before their SummerSlam match that they had in the WWF for the Intercontinental Belt. So, so have you ever seen the Dingo Warrior before?
Yes.
Okay. So the Dingo Warrior is basically the Ultimate Warrior, but with like a mustache.
Right.
He has like a little mustache going on here. And the Ravishing Rick Rude is basically how he was. He became a little bit more like flamboyant more in the WWF. But it's pretty cool to see like these two like big, promising stars are going to come on to be really big stars in the 80s. When they go to WWF pretty much the next year. Because I think they both debut for the WWF around 1987. And it's pretty cool seeing before they were on like the really big stage doing this match, watching them in Dallas doing the little match. And they have always had really good chemistry with each other. All right. But the biggest thing about this match was like, they're two body guys, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
So not only were they posing in this match, but they were wrestling a little bit. But then the match randomly stops. Okay. And the Dingo Warrior's like, listen, he's like telling Rude, like, listen, you're all acting like you're the strongest man in this, world class and everything. I challenge you right now to a arm wrestling match.
Uh-oh.
So within their wrestling match, they stopped right in the middle of it, and they both laid on their stomachs, and they did an arm wrestling match within the wrestling match.
Inside the middle of the wrestling.
Yes, in the ring. And then it got broken up a little bit, and they started fighting again, fighting back and forth in the corner, and eventually they both whipped each other's asses so much that they both got double disqualified.
Wow.
It was something. It was something. I'll just say that. It was it's not what they would do later on, but it's pretty fun to see them go at it to each other. And I always thought they had really good chemistry with each other, but it was definitely a fun little match. You can find it on the Peacock. I believe it's the they have it listed as the August 31st episode of World Class from 1986. But I guess when it originally aired, it was August 22nd. But they had it listed on the actual Peacock has August 31st. So, but very interesting match. You know what I mean? Two of my favorites, brother. The Dingo Warrior and Ravishing Rick Rude. Come on, man. What
you
more?
Can't beat that, right?
What screams out 80s more than that?
I know. I really like the Dingo Warrior character better than the Ultimate Warrior character for some reason.
Yeah.
But I just kind of have a dislike for the Ultimate Warrior, period. But I like the Dingo
crazy
Warrior
guy.
character.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's cool to see Gary Hart, which is obviously he was a huge manager. He pretty much managed almost everybody in World Class. And of course, Percy Pringle would later become known as Paul Bearer in the WWF too. So.
Who is the heel in this?
Ravishing Rick Dill. Yeah. Ravishing Rick Rude was the heel. So the Dingo Warrior, he was getting over pretty much as a babyface, Like I wouldn't say he wasn't as high as the Von Erichs were. He wasn't, because like even in this match, it wasn't like I only watched this match, but there's like a whole show that you can, the whole episode you can watch on there. But he wasn't even in the main event on the show. It was like on one of the Von Erichs was in the main event. So he wasn't like main event level, but you could tell that he was getting there because of his body, his size, and just the the aura of the Warrior. And they were also pushing Rick Rude before. Rick Rude was before like one of the champions there. He was their world champion at the time. Not at this time, but he was at the time. So losing them to the Fed actually hurt him a lot because they had a really promising star in the Dingo Warrior, and they had a really good heel as Ravishing Rick Rude too. But you could tell like these guys were going to be in the bigger stage. You could just tell by looking at them.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though I feel like Warrior's career was kind of short-lived compared to Rick Rude's, but
kind of. I mean, Warrior, because I think the whole '92 incident where he got busted for the steroids, and then he came back looking smaller, and then he would just kind of like show up and come back. I think Rick Rude had a better like wrestling career, but the problem is with Rick Rude, I think he had that match with Sting, where he really fucked up his back. It's either his neck or his back. And then he got that Lloyd of London insurance that paid him a bunch, but he couldn't wrestle again. And then he tried to wrestle again, and then he just eventually passed away. So it's I think Ravishing Rick Rude had a better wrestling career, but obviously Ultimate Warrior was a bigger character in wrestling lore.
I agree. I would agree with that.
But yeah, pretty fun match, everybody. The building blocks of what it would be, 80s and later 80s and early 90s of these two big stars, Ravishing Rick Rude and Ultimate Warrior. They're definitely on the rise at this particular time. So, but Alison, speaking of rise, what do we got for the metal music, brother? What are we gonna rise going to the Beta House? A party prom night.
Well, I do think this is pretty appropriate for this movie. So we pretty much, we talk about heavy metal every week on the show. And sometimes we kind of have to broaden the idea of what heavy metal is. And this is one of those weeks when we had to broaden that horizon to get something to fit in. But this week, and I don't know if we ever talked about this band before, but this week we're discussing Bon Jovi.
Yeah, Betty. Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi and their Slippery When Wet album, one of the biggest albums of the 80s.
Yes.
But I wouldn't necessarily consider them heavy metal in the strictest sense. But one thing that they definitely contributed to music and to metal in general is right in this era when this album came out, Bon Jovi found a way to take what people liked about metal, like things, the edge, some of the edge that people liked about metal and like hair metal at the time, which was still a little bit underground. I mean, by 85, like this was these bands were still, they were like the Wasp type bands and Motley Crue and Dokken was just starting and things like that. They found a way to take the things you liked about hair metal, the edgy things, and then refine that into a pop music format so that it could get played on the radio. So they were one of the first. I mean, I'm sure somebody could prove me wrong when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. They were one of the first hair metal bands to get big on the radio. And, their songs were played on the radio and it was, it wasn't just, the guys bought the heavy metal records and went to heavy metal concerts and girls bought pop music and went to pop concerts. Like this was like people coming together and then, they had female fans, they had male fans, pretty much everyone that was into hair metal from this era had this album. Everyone had this album. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen at the time. And everyone loved this album, which with good, with good reason. I mean, it had really good songwriting for one thing. Like you can't write bad, boring songs, regardless of how good of a player you are. You have to write good songs to make people want to listen to it. Songwriting, I think, is, the number one important thing. But this was like the first album that really bridged that gap between pop music and heavy metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're not like a huge Bon Jovi fan, but like, what are your thoughts on Bon Jovi? And I have a story about Bon Jovi at the end of this too.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way all the time to listen to Bon Jovi, but I do know a lot of the hits that they had off this album. Obviously, yes. Living on a Prayer. I mean, that plays everywhere. Wanted, Dead or Alive. You Give Love a Bad Name. I mean, those are like, you hear those songs everywhere. You know what I mean? Car commercials, at the bar, the local bar. Some people play some Bon Jovi, these ones, drunk guy doing karaoke. You know what I mean? Yep. They'll get those songs all the time. I do know Bon Jovi was a big influence for bands that I do like, like.
Oh, interesting.
Obviously the band, him, they're
oh, right. Okay.
Like that style of songs, a lot of the, more of the love rock kind of bands, you know what I mean? Obviously Bon Jovi is in that category.
Love rock.
I don't know. That's why I covered the love rock bands, because
that's awesome.
They sing about love and they're a rock band, love rock.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
So I do know about that. Like I said, like I respect the Bon Jovi. I get the gimmick, basically. Like I know what they're going for. I do think this is interesting too, that the original cover of this album was supposed to feature like a busty woman in a wet t-shirt with the words "slippery when wet," which makes sense.
Which is perfect.
Yeah, on the front, framed by a hot pink border. That would have gone great with this movie. All right, but
absolutely.
But the executives they were worried about it at the time, so then they made what we came to see, which was the garage wet slippery when wet painted on the dark background. So it's very interesting.
Yeah,
they went that way just to sell more.
It looks like it's on a window.
Yeah,
like it's which was actually created by a garbage bag.
Yeah,
they used a garbage bag and they sprayed water on it, and then they traced slippery when wet and then photographed that. But yeah, it looks like it's on a window, which I think is still a cool. I mean, it's an iconic cover now. So I mean, you have to like the cover. I think that the original cover, had it stayed, would have been very dated. Whereas the cover they used is iconic, and you can still use that today. But like if the original cover were out today on releases, it would look dated. It would look like it came out in the 80s. Whereas the cover they released looks like it could come out at any time. The original cover was released in Japan, so the Japanese releases have the girl with the boobs and the wet T-shirt on it.
Yeah, buddy, nice.
Mm-hmm. But I do have an interesting story. Well, I think it's interesting anyway, about Bon Jovi. So when this album first came out, it did not do well immediately. Like it wasn't an immediate hit. So and Bon Jovi was not a big band. So this was their third album, and they had a minor hit with Runaway, but then when they released their second album, it just didn't do very well. And then they released this album, which eventually became huge, but it wasn't a big hit at first. So the record company put them on tour with 38 Special, who was a big band at the time. The guy from 38 Special was the brother from the guy from Leonard Skinner, and the Leonard Skinner plane crash happened a few years before this. So 38 Special was riding pretty high at the time, and they were on tour with Bon Jovi opening. And one of the shows that they played was in Cullowhee, which is not too far from where we live, at Western Carolina University. And it's just weird for me to think that Bon Jovi opened for 38 Special after Slippery When Wet came out in Cullowhee. Because they would, 6 months later, they would be playing, football stadiums and shit. But yeah, so they did this for a little while. They did the Slippery When Wet tour opening for 38 Special for a little while, and then all of a sudden this album just took off. Yeah. And they were just like, this don't work for me, brother. And we are going to go off on our own headlining tour, and then the rest is history.
I like it. Whenever they bring "It Don't Work for Me, Brother" into the conversation, they know what they're doing.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, obviously
Bon Jovi,
a big band.
Slippery When Wet.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely I mean, like I said, the songs I just mentioned, you can hear those everywhere, and to this day.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know how many local bars I went into. I heard those songs, especially "Living on a Prayer."
Oh, I mean, I guarantee you, if we went downtown today, "Living on a Prayer" would be playing in a bar before we left.
Yes.
"Living on a Prayer." This is interesting too. "Living on a Prayer" in 2022, I believe it was. I looked this up. Was streamed over 500 million times, not a million,
crazy.
A billion with a B. So over 500 million times it was streamed on streaming services. And that's a song that's 40 years old.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, that's just fucking crazy that people are still listening to that much 40 years later. So that's lasting right there. That's iconic.
Exactly. Do you think Night of the Creeps got played about 500 million times?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
You know what I mean?
Not according to how much money it made.
They don't want to see the adventures of Chris and JC?
Man, they should have. I mean, they're missing out on this. This is definitely a cult classic, but this movie was great. But yeah, it did not do as well at the box office as Slippery When Wet did, for sure.
It's getting there. You know what I mean? Slowly but surely. One day it'll get there.
It's sad.
But let's talk about a little bit who booked this shit, brother.
Yeah.
Night of the Creeps. I've been waiting to do this one for a while because, anytime I see anything with, Tom Atkins in there, I want to do it. But also, like I said, this one looked kind of fun, So
and it was.
Yeah, it was. Definitely was. So this one was directed by Fred Dekker. Okay?
Dekker.
What did I say? Dekker? My bad. Dekker.
Yeah. Fred Dekker, yes. Fred Dekker is a guy who worked with Shane Black a lot. And they would help each other write their movies, and he would help write some of the movies that Shane Black directed, and Shane Black would help write some of the Fred Dekker movies. Shane Black is known, I guess, primarily for Lethal Weapon and Iron Man 3. Those two big movies that I can think of. Yeah.
But Fred, yeah. He's known to do mostly horror comedy films.
Oh, yes.
He's going to do the House movies that we're going to be doing, Monster Squad.
Mm-hmm.
He helped direct and write RoboCop 3.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Classic.
He did a couple of Tales from the Crypt episode, and he also did some Star Trek Enterprise episodes too. So, you know, he's mostly in the vein of like the comedy, and I thought he did pretty well with his comedy. Like his comedy wasn't like we're gonna be super over the top stupid like the fucking Saturday 14th movies were, but his comedy was more in line with the story, I thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it was still a horror movie, but it had some comedy elements to it.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest with you, I had successfully forgotten and rid my mind of the Saturday the 14th movies until you just brought them back up.
Well, you know, got to bring it up to past, brother.
I guess so.
That was a hard month. Check it out in the archives, everybody. That one was a hard month.
But yeah, it was rough. So the whole month was rough. All these movies sucked.
So, you know, like you could tell that Fred, his intention was to do like these B movie, old school B movie horror with this stuff.
Exactly.
With the aliens coming downtown, you know, with the CGI spaceships and stuff, slugs walking around.
You're obsessed with CGI. Actually, I think there was some CGI used in this movie, but CGI was not prominent in 1986, just so the people know.
Well, what was it like? I guess they were just doing, what were they doing here in 1986 for their special effects? Just special effects?
They would use animation a lot, and they would use stop motion animation. Like we'll talk about this a little bit later, because I was going to ask you how the slugs were made, because they do look like CGI, but it's hard for me to believe this movie could have afforded that at the time.
No. The slugs were definitely probably like, you know, made real. Like probably just like, you know, made
not
like,
the ones that are moving real fast though.
Oh yeah.
Or did they just shoot them slow and then speed up the film? But like, there's some scenes where you can see like humans moving at regular speed in the background, and the slugs are moving really fast across the floor.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really look like they're animated either. So just for reference, I looked this up because I knew that you would bring up CGI like you always do in these 80s movies, which didn't really exist. So the first fully animated figure in a movie that was fully CGI was in a movie called Young Sherlock Holmes, and they had animated a swordsman in that movie. But that was made by Lucasfilm, and there's a world of difference between the money that Lucasfilm would have had to make their movie and the money that Night of the Creeps had. But so it's hard for me to believe that they actually used CGI in this, the early CGI, but they may have possibly, because I don't know how else they would have done it. I mean, unless it is hand drawn animation, but it just looked a little bit computery to me. So I don't know. We'll talk about it when we get there, though.
Yeah, I mean, other than it being animation, it had to be stop motion. Maybe with the.
I mean, that's the only other thing it could have been. Yeah. I mean, the spaceships were definitely physical models.
Yeah.
I mean, they were not CGI. They were definitely physical models. But yeah, the slugs are interesting. Like, I'm not actually sure how they.
Maybe they put them on little animated go-karts.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
That could be possible.
So the director, Fred, he originally wanted to shoot the film in black and white.
Yeah, like a 1950s movie.
Like, well, the beginning was black and white.
Yeah,
you
right. Because it took place in the 50s.
Well, half of it did. Well, the beginning part did.
The very beginning did, yeah.
So he included every B movie cliche he could think of and insisted on directing the script himself. So most of the main characters he had in the film were named after different horror movie makers. All right, I don't know if you caught on that. So we had Romero, we had Carpenter, we had Raimi, Landis, Hooper, Cronenberg, Cameron, Steve Miner, Wes Craven, and Mario Bava. All named after horror movie makers. And apparently he wrote this script in a week. Damn.
Yes.
Man, we take some of these Marvel films. It takes over like 5 years to do one script. This guy wrote one in a week. All right, come on.
Yeah.
Brother.
Yep. When you care about something, you can do it real quick.
So I thought this part was a little interesting. So Night of the Creeps was released here, like I said, August 22nd, 1986 in the United States. But in the Philippines, the film was released on March 5th, 1987 with free protector stickers handed out to early moviegoers.
Yeah, I was confused on that. What was that for?
I don't know. Were you getting protected by the slug? Maybe they put it over their mouth?
Like, are they... That's what I was thinking. They were to put over their mouth like Tom Atkins does with the tape later on.
Yeah. Interesting. And then I like how in different states, including Connecticut, Ohio, the movie was released as Homecoming Night, which I like Night of the Creeps a little better.
Yeah, because Homecoming Night doesn't make any sense because there's no homecoming.
Well, yeah, there is. Like, I guess the with the beta crew was going to take out the frat girl house crew, and I guess they were going to some sort of homecoming, but they didn't call it the homecoming ball. They called it like something else.
Okay, well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, why would you not call it Night of the Creeps? Like, Night of the Creeps is something I feel like is something people would go to more than Homecoming Night.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know.
Well, Homecoming Night, like that sounds like the school slashers that we talk about here and there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we have like exactly. It sounds like one of those style movies, which we did have like a little bit of the slasher in here, but it wasn't really. This is mostly like a alien zombie movie. So apparently it has a unofficial sequel too. Okay. Zombie Town. You ever heard of Zombie Town?
No, I did not know this until I read about it for the show. But yeah, apparently it has an unofficial sequel.
Yeah, it was marked in some regions as a sequel, being alternately titled Night of the Creeps 2, Zombie Town in Germany. So that's very interesting. I never even seen that or heard about that, or I even know where to find that at all.
Yeah, I want to try and look that up to see if I can find that movie to see what the unofficial sequel is like.
So, this... obviously we were talking about, the main plot of the film is zombies in a way, but it also has mixtures of slashers and alien invasions in it as well too. And of course, like we talked about, it didn't perform super well at the box office, but obviously became a hit over time. I was trying to figure out why Tom Atkins was in this movie, but I could not figure out why. I don't know if it was for a paycheck or if he liked the role. Maybe.
Well, he says it's his favorite role that he's ever had.
That's right. He did say that, yes. I knew I was looking for that information somewhere, yes. Yeah, he did say, like you were saying, that this was his favorite role that he ever did. I guess he really liked playing the detective guy, because he did have like the best background story in this film compared to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is what he said. So he portrayed Detective Ray Cameron in the 1986 cult horror film Night of the Creeps, a role Atkins calls his favorite. He tells Classic Horror Magazine, "It was the most fun film I've ever worked on. It was a pure giggly from beginning to end." So, funny. The director Fred Dekker was very young and very talented, and he went on to do the Monster Squad afterwards. I think he wrote a terrific film that was kind of a big put on of 50s horror, and I had great lines in that movie. So yeah, he really liked it. I guess he just liked the character, the lines, and everybody was just having fun on set. So can't beat that. So pretty good stuff here. Let me see. Let me see something. The guy who played Brad that you thought was a Nazi, Alan Kirster.
Yeah,
because he is German. Let's see what let's see what he did.
Wow. So what a coincidence.
So Kirster was inducted into the Missouri Walk of Fame at the annual Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival located in Mansfield, Missouri in 2022. Wonder why. Was it for this film? That might have been something. I mean, he didn't do a whole lot. I mean, he was in Hot Chili. All right.
Yeah.
Double Teamed. All right. Like this, I think this is like the only horror film he's did was Night of the Creeps. Very interesting. Let's see. Okay, so in 1989, Kirster was nominated for a Young Artist Award as Best Young Actor, guest starring in a drama or comedy series for his part as Bubba Higgins in Mama's Family. So.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. So
that's that guy. Mama's Family is a great show if you've never seen it. It's very funny.
So yeah, very interesting. Oh, okay. I see where they got some of the names. So our girl Cynthia, her last name was Cronenberg. Yes.
Yeah.
So Then we had Sergeant Ramey was one of them. So yeah, they kind of we had Officer Craven. So a lot of the officers they gave the horror movie names to. Like we had Officer Bava, Officer Craven. We had obviously Ray was Cameron on there too. So very interesting. So, but yeah, I mean, I say let's talk about it. Well, actually, before we get into it, let me talk about the soundtrack here too. All right. I thought it was a pretty good old soundtrack that they had on here, which you could still buy out there, which is interesting. And it was a soundtrack. It was featuring Barry, what's his name? DeVorzon score for the film,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he did all of them except for like 2 tracks on there. So, but I thought it was pretty fun. I like one of the songs is called "The Axeman Cometh." So it can't beat that.
Yeah.
So, but everybody check it out.
I thought this did have a good soundtrack.
Yeah, definitely. But I say, let's start this alien invasion off with these slugs going into people's mouths. Let's get into Night of the Creeps.
The night of the fall is finally here for Chris, Cindy, and JC. It's going to be the best night of their lives. But tonight is also the night of the creeps. From a world unknown comes a nightmare unimagined. First, they are under you, around you, on you, and then inside you.
They get into your mouth and you walk around while they incubate, even if you're dead.
They are a new breed of terror.
Freeze!
They are a different kind of horror.
Zombies, exploding heads, creepy crawlies. We could have a little problem.
The creeps are taking over.
I got good news and bad news, girls.
What?
The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
You have never had a night like this. Night of the creeps. If you scream, you're dead.
Okay. So we started the film very interesting. Okay. We have like these alien-like creatures. Okay. That are basically you can find their mask at Spirit Halloween. And
it was better than that, but yeah.
And like the mask like barely even moves at all. Like they're talking their alien language and the mouths are not moving.
I was gonna say I didn't think the mask moved at all. Like I thought that they just made a solid piece to go over these small people's actors' heads.
Yes.
I thought this was great. I have never seen this movie before.
Yeah, me
for some reason. Like somehow I missed this. I knew about it, but I'd never seen it before. I was surprised. I did not think the movie would start this way, but it has little aliens chasing something around with their little laser guns, which was great. Speaking their little alien language, which was awesome. I want action figures of these little aliens.
I know, right? Like where they were only in the beginning and like maybe
made?
Towards the end. I was like, bro, like bring these little aliens back. I love them.
Yeah, we need a little alien action figure 2-pack of the little guys, and then we need a Tom Atkins action figure, and we need a Cynthia action figure, and everybody else can go fuck off. But yeah, with those things we need.
You don't want your JC action figure too? Yeah.
Oh, the JC would be kind of cool with his arm crutches. That would be an awesome accessory for him to have. He was a great character. Yeah, that would be awesome.
So
somebody make Night of the Creeps action figures.
They might be out there. We just gotta look hard. I never looked up if they had any merchandise for this movie or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. So the little alien crew is saying like, this is an experiment and it must not be shipped, and of course it gets shipped after they blow up half the stuff. So now we are transported on Sorority Road, 1959.
Yeah.
All right. Black and white, brother. All right. This is your grandparents getting it on Sorority Road. Okay.
Oh, gross. But okay.
So yeah, Pam, come on now. You know what I mean? You got to get here somehow, brother. All right. So Pam, she's getting ready. All right. And we have this guy, Johnny. He's like throwing rocks at the window. That's how you do it, brother. You know what I mean? You don't need Facebook, Twitter, and shit to give your girl a little, you know, hey, she tagged me in this tweet or whatever to go get me to come over. No, you got to go to the window and throw rocks at it. That's how you do it.
Right, because that's how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, what's the new thing? They tag. No, you can send them like a snap. That's what it is. I'm not sending any girls snaps, okay? I'm throwing rocks at their fucking window.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. If I really like you, I'm gonna throw a rock at your window.
Yeah. So they go off, Johnny and Pam, and they are on like the cliff, all right, which I guess they call it the point, and they're staring at the stars, right? And Pam is trying to figure out which the biggest star is, okay? And during this, we do hear a radio broadcast that some axe-wielding murderer has escaped the penitentiary he was staying in. He's very known to be dangerous. And this is when we meet a cop, which we're going to find out is going to be young Cameron. Okay. And he sees Pam in the car, and Pam looks at him. They're all looking at each other awkwardly. And I guess they had a fling back in the day. And Johnny asks, like, who is that guy? She's like, oh, that's just somebody from my past. And they're still looking at stars. And we can see that a big meteorite basically goes right past their heads, which is obviously that thing we saw at the beginning, which was the experiment container owned by the aliens.
Yes.
So Johnny goes up there and sees it. He parks his car. He wants to go see what it was all about. He leaves Pam in the car, and Pam's listening to the radio saying that there's the crazy killer's on the loose. He killed 4 orderlies, and he is on Route 66. They know exactly where he's at too. Oh, by the way, here's where he's at. We can't capture him right now, but we know where he's at. He's on Route 66 at the Corman University. And of course, Pam's like, oh shit. She's like looking around. She's like screaming out Johnny's name, looking very nervous. We see Johnny. He got to the point where he found the meteorite full with deadly slugs on it. And during this, we can see that the axe murderer is coming up slowly to Pam's car. And this is when we see the slug go into Johnny's mouth, and we see the axe guy axes up Pam. Well, we don't see the whole thing, but we see him like swinging his axe. And now we have transported to 1986. All right, and we're on the same place, the Sorority Boulevard, 1986. Okay, it's Pledge Week. Alison, you ever pledged anything?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I fucking hate fraternities.
Brother, if this was a different life, I think I could have been a good fraternity guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be like a Brad character, but I would be like the, what's the jock guy we see pretty soon? Steve? I'd be like him. You know what I mean?
Steve.
We'll get to Steve here in a second.
That scene was great, but we'll get there.
They seem like they're having fun. These frat dudes, you know what I mean? Terrorizing these nerds. Come on, brother.
No, I was the nerd being terrorized until I learned how to fight.
That's true. Now all the nerds have taken over the frat. Did they even do frat? I feel like fratting. Well, we talked about this before. Like fratting, I think it's like an old thing. But then again, we could just be old.
It is kind of an old thing. I think they still do it, but it's a much different thing now than it was then.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah,
as far as I know,
it's not as like popularized as it was in like the 80s and shit. So we basically meet these two nerds. We meet Chris and JC. JC is the one with the crutches. Chris is like this ginger looking dude. Okay.
Yeah.
And his big thing is he can't get laid. All right, and he wants to get laid, and he finally found the girl of his dreams, who has big Hogans.
Yes.
Even though they weren't that
Hogans.
big. I've seen bigger Hogans before.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely seen bigger.
So the girl's name is Catherine. Do I get that right? Is it Catherine?
No, it's Cynthia.
Cynthia, that's her fucking name is. I don't know where I got Catherine from.
Cynthia Cronenberg.
Yeah, Cronenberg. And Chris, he's too nervous to talk to her. All right. So JC kind of like, you could tell JC is not nervous at all. So And he really wants to, like, he likes his girl so much that he wants to marry her already. It's like, damn, okay. So we cut, and now we're at a party. We're playing some great 80s music. But you know what? That's another thing that's changed, too. You know what I mean? All these parties and these horror movies, nowadays they just play some gangster rap, which I don't, I'm not too, I don't mind that at all. They'll either play some cool, rap music on there, but when they, that's like nowadays they probably play some, like, Taylor Swift in the background. Some crap like that I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
If you're not going to play the gangster rap or the crazy 80s music, I don't want to hear it. But this one had great 80s music in the background. And apparently the slogan for this party was "The betas are better." That was the frat house. Right?
Yeah.
Betas are better.
Which is pretty funny.
And apparently they love Miller High Life. It was all over this fucking party. That's the
Miller
80s
time.
beer, brother. I'm telling you, man, that 80s Miller High Life is the 80s beer.
Man, Miller High Life is a good beer. I mean, even today, Miller High Life is a good beer.
And we had some of the girls drinking Pepsi too. So we're just marketing all this shit. So Chris, he still's looking at the girl, Cynthia. Okay, but now he sees that the Cynthia is talking to some jock football dude, which you find out that his name is Steve. And Chris really wants to, like, talk to her and stuff, but he's super nervous. So JC is like, oh, fuck. When you're depressed, I feel depressed. That's what JC was basically saying. So he's going to go talk to the girl for him. All right, which never really works out, but I guess in this case it kind of did. So JC goes up to Cynthia and goes up to Steve. He's like, hey, what was your name again? He's like, my name is Steve. He's like, oh, yeah, you got a phone call. He's like, oh, thanks, bro. And then the girl's like, okay, he didn't really have a phone call, did he? He's like, no, these dumb jocks, they'll just listen to everything. Hey, let me talk to you. Like he did the line where, like, something about, like, I'm going to talk to you as quick as his IQ or something like that. I thought that line was pretty funny. So he talks to her and stuff, but basically he's saying, like, hey, my boy over there, Chris, likes you and everything. Well, she's like, well, why isn't he coming here talking to me himself? And she's like, why? He's like, JC was even like, I don't know, because he's dumb. Okay. And then, like, okay, do you have, like, a boyfriend? And then she didn't really say yes or no. And then Steve comes back saying, like, hey, I didn't have no phone call. He's like, I'm sorry, what was your name again? He just names off all these jocks' names, like, Chad, Jeff, and all these Chad. And then he walks away. And then Chris is like, okay, well, what's going on with her? Does she have a boyfriend or not? He's like, well, she didn't really say. And she did ask for you to just go talk to her. And Chris is like, oh, I can't talk to her. Maybe what we'll do is we'll join this fraternity so I could be a frat guy to get her. I was like, okay.
All right.
So that's his angle. Okay, so now we see that JC and Chris, they are talking with the frat people, and the main frat guy is Brad, the guy I've been talking about with the super blonde hair. And he's saying, oh, you guys want to join this, fraternity. This is a very exclusive club. We have most of our members already picked out, but we will let you guys enter if you do a very special task for us. And Chris is like, oh, shit, we're going to have sex with farm animals? And he's like, well, Brad was like, well, I wasn't thinking that, but that's a great idea, but I wasn't thinking that. I got something else for you. And then they leave. It's like, well, at least we want to have sex with farm animals. All right.
Oof,
it's supposed to be funny there, Alison.
Well, I was like, it just kind of, like, it is supposed to be funny, but it kind of just jumped to this weird dark place all of a sudden.
I know.
Like, who's talking about having sex with farm animals?
Apparently
like, all of a sudden this just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Apparently he's just thinking about that. So strange shit. But
JC
anyway.
is all like, well, maybe if you had sex with one, you start thinking about Cynthia. So then we find out Cynthia is in a relationship with Brad. Okay. Even though she didn't really count Brad as her boyfriend, maybe they're just fucking. Who knows? So now we see a nerdy scientist guy. Okay. And he is trying to. He can't figure out the last code. Okay. To get into his laboratory. So we see JC and Chris. They sneak into the basement of the hidden laboratory that they found some reason. And they're walking around, and I guess basically what's going on is the task that they were tasked with to join the fraternity was to find a dead body and leave it at the doorstep of a different fraternity. All right. Okay. And we did find out, too, that even if they completed this task, the frat boys weren't going to let them in. So they go in, so JC looks at this pin CAD and is looking for one code, and the doctor's on the phone with somebody telling him to go through his journals to find the one little code. And of course, JC guesses the code right away. He just presses 0 and it gets into the secret laboratory. So they open it up, and this basically is the most 1980s secret laboratory you've ever seen. It has those wooden boxes with a bunch of lights on it, and we have somebody he's freezed up right now. And we can see that it's actually Johnny from the beginning of the 50s. He's been frozen. All right.
Right.
And they're all freaked out, and I believe it's Chris that makes the joke, well, this can't be Walt Disney.
Ooh. So do you understand that joke?
Yeah, Walt Disney, wasn't he frozen or something? Or he's trying to freeze him?
Think so. So I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I was thinking when I read it. Like, well, I don't know if he actually was, but I think there was an urban legend that says that Walt Disney was frozen, cryogenically frozen until at such a time as they could bring him back to life or something. Yeah. So I think that's what that joke means, but and it must be that because you got the same thing out of it. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard that joke, but he was like frozen, and they're keeping him frozen until he come out and save Disney or something.
Right.
I guess not yet. We're still waiting.
I guess not yet. So he's gonna come back and then see all these Star Wars movies and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, what the fuck is this?" So then the guys start pressing buttons because they can't find a dead body. So Chris doesn't want to mess with this because he's like, okay, this is like an experiment. We can't mess with this. JC's like, well, we don't got no choice. It's the only dead body we can find. So I'm going to press this button that says disengage. Okay.
Right.
So he presses it. The guy gets the other doctor finally gets his code. Okay. The door opens. The guys are trying to take the frozen body with them. And before they can get him out the door, the frozen body like touches them, like grabs them, and then the kids run out of the secret laboratory, past the doctor who just falls down. They run out of there, and the doctor goes back in there. He gets attacked by the frozen Johnny, and he gets a slug in the mouth.
Okay. Slug in the mouth.
So now the JC and Chris go back to their dorm rooms. They start arguing about each other for being chicken shit, and this is when JC basically gives them the speech. I thought this was like a very interesting speech. So JC is basically saying that Chris is some depressed jerk all the time because JC knows that he will never get women. So he now just wants to make Chris happy because that will make him happy. And that's why he agreed to try to join this frat to make him happy. But nothing ever makes Chris as happy. So he's just a depressed asshole the whole time because he can't get any women. All right. And then Chris is all like, well, if this was 2024, this scene would go way different. Than the 80s scene would have gone. We would have had a different style of a love story, brother. Okay. So they they basically make up, and 80s making up, they're just playing with each other. Different playing. Okay. So they are, so yeah. So now we have the, let's see where we're at. Okay. So now, this is when we finally meet Cameron. Tom Atkins. He's on a beach, sipping a pina colada with a bunch of hot blondes around him. And I was like, yes. Because, every movie, our boy Tom has to be the sex idol. Yeah. In all these movies, brother. Okay?
Yep. Sitting on the beach, sipping a drink. That's what my life should be.
Exactly. And then he sees this girl fully clothed come out of the water. All right? He's like looking at her weird. And then he flashbacks to 1959 incident of Pam getting chopped up and axed.
Yeah.
And he's witnessing the whole thing. And then he wakes up out of his cold sleep. So we can see that now this Cameron guy is connected with the beginning stuff and this axe murderer. So when this happens, he gets a call from the police, and his tagline is always "Thrill me." All right.
Yeah, I love that. Thrill me.
Thrill
That's
me.
how I'm going to answer the phone from now on. Thrill me.
Yeah, thrill me. It's like, hey, we need you to come in to, work a 9 to 5 shift. Well, thrill me. All right.
Well, no, you have to answer it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't answer the phone, but if I did, I would just pick the phone up and say, thrill me.
Oh, yeah, that'd be funny. Like, answer like, thrill me. Well, your extended car warranty is out of date. Okay.
That's not thrilling.
That's not thrilling. So now they go. Basically, he gets called to the laboratory. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he gets there, and he's talking to all these police officers, and he's saying like, "Hey, there's supposed to be 2 bodies here. Where's the other one at?" We only see like this dead lab guy. All right. And he's like, "Well, I don't see the dead body." He's like, "Well, where is it?" It's like, basically the other cop's saying, "Well, we had 2 rookie cops over here take care, and I shouldn't have done that. And we didn't even get a statement from the janitor yet. And we got to go do that as well, too." And of course, so basically, Cameron, he's working around a bunch of dumb cops that are named after horror movie directors. So, and then they're saying like, "Well, yeah, they had a body on ice that was from 1959. And Cameron was like, "Well, we can't have a corpse just walking around that's 27-year-old dead. All right, can't be. Where's he at?" So now we can see that Brad, he's dropping off Cynthia, and he has to go do pledge stuff. All right, and then during all this stuff, the dead Johnny body's walking around during all this. And we see Cynthia, she goes back to her sorority mother's house, something like that. And this one girl is saying, "Hey, I got a science experiment. I have a bunch of human brains. Where can I place them?" She's like, "Oh, just put them in the basement. Just don't get them up near me."
That's where they go.
So now Cynthia, she's getting ready. Okay. So we're starting to get some of our 18 to 34 male demographics going on here. Mm. We have a couple of the girls. They're drinking some tea. All right. And the dead guy's walking around everywhere. We have one girl who studies. All right. And she hears a noise at the door, but it's just her cat named Gordon. All right. And Cynthia hears somebody throwing some rocks at her window, because we could see that where they're staying was the same place that the Pam girl was staying before. All right. Very similar to it. So she hears another noise, and then eventually she opens up one of the windows, and she can see that Johnny is dead, and gives her a rose, and then he gets a bunch of slugs pour out of him. All right. Because his head exploded. So all the cops, all the cops are showing up now. Cameron sees the dead bodies. All right. And of course, he's all saying, before he goes anywhere, "Thrill me. What's going on here? Thrill me." So, and then Cameron sees that it's the mother's cottage house, and he has a flashback. All right. And it's the flashback from the crazy axe guy from the 50s. All right, so he's kind of like looking at this house a little weird, and we'll find out later why. So now the girls are all freaked out because there's basically like a dead body in front of their mother's house and everything. And Chris and JC, they meet up. They're coming home from class, and they meet up with the frat guys. And the frat guys are like, "Hey man, what the fuck? That wasn't cool." And they're like, "Okay, well, what are you talking about?" It's like, "Well, you put the dead body at the wrong frat house. Why'd you put it at the girl's house? You're supposed to put it at the other frat house." And it was like, whoa, listen, man. Yeah, we went to go find the body and stuff, but we chickened out. Like, we didn't do any of this stuff. All right. And of course, JC's making a bunch of jokes the whole time. And eventually Brad trips JC, and it calls them dorks. All right. And then he's like, "Come on, babe." And then Cynthia gives him the old Jack in the Box flip off. All right.
Yeah, love that. The classic Jack in the Box flip off.
Yeah, gets him good. So she apologizes for them, and then this is when Chris finally can talk to Cynthia face to face now. All right. So now JC and Chris, now they got called in from our Cameron cop about running out of the lab. So basically what happened with them is the eyewitness, the janitor, saw them running out of the lab. So now Cameron is like questioning him. He's like, hey, why were you running out of the lab at 40 miles per hour screaming? And why was this dead guy there? And, did you have anything, to do with this? And they said, like, well, we got tasked. They're just being honest. Like, okay, well, we got tasked to go find a dead body to put on this, to put it on the frat house. Okay, but we chickened out and, we ran out of there and we didn't see or damage anything. Okay. And there's like, well, it's just very weird that this body that did landed on this, frat house, doorstep basically. All right, the dead just don't get up and walk around. All right. Mm-hmm. And then the janitor kind of backs him up, and he was just laughing about them being screaming and laughs at them for being cowards basically. But basically the camera didn't have enough evidence on them to see what's going on here. So we're at we're back at the girl's house, the girl's mother's house, and we can see that some slugs are all around that place. So this is when we're seeing those slugs you were talking about. They're animated, just all running around.
Yeah.
So Cynthia gets a call from Brad. All right. And he's talking about, basically what happened with those kids, the two dorks, JC and Chris. And she's like, because he's, trying to talk to her. And she eventually gets angry at him and hangs up because he's being an asshole. So now the glasses girl hears the door again. And she thinks, oh, it's the Gordon cat. He's there. And then she grabs the cat. And now the cat is dead with a slug in him. And we don't see what happens to that girl until later. So I like my notes here. Cameron goes over dead body notes and drinks whiskey.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So he gets a call. Of course, he says, thrill me. Thrill me, brother. What's going on here? And then now they can see that the janitor, okay? And well, now this is when we get a call. We see the janitor. And he's walking around. He's still laughing about JC and Chris being running and being scared. And eventually the janitor gets killed. Okay, he gets killed because of the body that the dead. They didn't call him a doctor, but then they call him the lab person who was working there that night for the secret laboratory. He woke up after his sleep, or his I guess he was zombified now, and he basically got past two cops. Basically just saying oh yeah, just have a nice day. But then he ends up killing.
Yeah, they're just yeah, I was about to say, don't they? He's walking out naked with blood on him, and the cops the security guards just oh, see you tomorrow.
Yep. So now Cynthia, she now shows up because she's all upset about that conversation she had with Brad. She now shows up to the dorm room of Chris and JC, and of course Chris is super nervous. All right, so now they walk Cynthia, and they're leaving together. Eventually, JC he excuses himself because Cynthia's she's basically telling what she saw. She's like, man, I saw this dead guy, and there was he was trying to give me a rose, and all these slugs were happening. Of course, JC was making jokes the whole time, and then he's he kind of read the room, and he got out of there. And this is when we could see more of the building blocks to Chris's and Cynthia's relationship here as they walk off together with slugs all around them. So now we see JC. He's in the restroom, right? And he's in a stall that reads Striper Rules. Is that
I saw that. I was hoping you'd notice. Yeah. That was awesome.
The band Striper, right?
Yes. Spelled the same way.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. So now the dead janitor who just died by the dead lab assistant. He is now in the restroom with JC, and now there's a bunch of slugs running all the way around. All right, and JC can't really figure out what's going on, so he grabs a light, and he puts a match on fire, and he realizes that fire can kill these slugs, and then we don't see him.
Mm-hmm.
So now Chris is taking Cynthia home, and then this is when she invites him out to the ball party. Yeah, that big, I guess their version of the homecoming. And Chris is like, well, what about Brad? Okay. And she's like, well, Brad's an asshole, and just be here tomorrow and pick me up. He's like, all right.
Yes, exactly.
So here's like my of this movie. Here's like my favorite like parts coming up. Is over here from our boy Cameron. So Chris is leaving, right? He's like, oh yeah, I got to meet a date with my dream girl. Hell yeah. So Cameron shows up. He's like, zombies, exploding heads, creepy collars, and you got a date to the formal. Classic Spanky. I was like, that's perfect.
I love how he starts calling him Spanky.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So then they start drinking whiskey together, right? Bro,
yeah.
If I could be Tom Atkins' character when I grow older like this, this would be awesome. Just talk to a kid about all the glory days you used to have. It's great. So he's like, hey kid.
Yeah. I love how like Tom Atkins makes him drink whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. You get like a kid, hey, you're gonna drink this whiskey, brother. I'm gonna tell you about my stories. So
but you wanna know you wanna hear something like really terrifying in a way?
Well, go ahead.
I don't have his exact birth date, but you are nearly as old, or basically the same age as Tom Atkins was in this movie now.
Oh, nice.
And I am older than that.
Brother, okay. This guy, yeah, he aged. But you know what? Tom, he's one of those guys that doesn't age, but he always looked old.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that he looked he's always looked old.
Yeah. So like technically, does he age or not? Very interesting. But that's pretty funny though. That is pretty funny. So now Cameron is talking to Chris. Is like, okay, hey, let me ask you, do you ever had a high school sweetheart? And Cameron's like, yeah, I had one, and she blew me out. She didn't want to talk to me. He's like, I also had a high school sweetheart. He's like, well, what happened to her? She's like, she blew me off, didn't want to tell me. All right, you ever see your high school sweetheart getting killed by an axe murderer? And he's like, oh, shit.
Holy shit, no.
He's like, let me tell you a story. All right. Yeah, this axe murderer, he was hacking up. All right.
Yeah.
He was hacking up my high school sweetheart right in front of me. You know what I mean? So when she left me, I turned to police. So I was on police duty that night. All right. And do you know what I did? When I saw him axe up my high school sweetheart, I tracked him down. And then during the whole time, Chris is like, okay, maybe you shouldn't tell me this. He's like, I tracked him down. All right. I tracked him and I killed him with a shotgun, a 12 gauge. Do you know what I did, Chris? He's like, I don't know if I want to know. I pulled the trigger.
I want to know.
And I wrapped his body and I let it rot. And you know where I put that body, Spanky? Do you know where I put it? And he's like, oh shit, are you gonna tell me? He's like let me figure out. I put it, all right, at an old abandoned lot that is now Mother's cottage. All right, that's where the body is now. So yeah, I'm a little freaked out about this. Okay, and he's like, okay. So basically, the axe murderer that he killed, he buried him. He killed him himself and confessed to Chris about his murder that he did so long ago. But he also buried the body underneath where the mother's cottage was. So now he thought it was very interesting that dead body that he found at the mother's cottage, he might think it's all connected, basically. So then we're back at the mother's college now. We see an old lady watching some TV, and then something is busting through the floor, and it just so happened to be the axe murderer that Cameron killed. He is now a dead zombie-like creature.
Yes, a very rotten, dead zombie.
He can still smile though, so there you go.
Strangely, he can, yeah, even though he has no face.
So the old lady gets axed. All right. They call again why he's there. He's like, of course, thrill me. What's going on? Thrill me. And then they hear about the accident happening. This crazy axe murderer is out there. So now Cameron heads over with a shotgun. And he's ready to take care of this bastard from his past. So he gets all the police officers to look around the neighborhood. He's yelling at everybody now. Cameron's just yelling at everybody. Oh, you police officers, get over here. This lady got hacked up. This one guy's like, yeah, we can't bring her out on a stretcher because we don't have enough stretchers to bring out all her parts. So they start checking all around. And then these two officers eventually get attacked by the axe zombie. All right. And then this is when they're calling into the police car. And they're saying they basically got him surrounded. And then now Cameron has to go get his 12 gauge. So they corner him, the dead axe zombie. All right, and then Cameron's like, I already killed you, you son of a bitch. All right. And they start shooting at him, but nothing happens until Cameron actually blows off his head, and they can see that a bunch of slugs escaped, and then they're all shocked. They have no idea what's going on. So we got the next scene. Chris is feeling all good because he's getting his tuxedo. And he wants to figure out where JC is, though, because he didn't come home last night. All right. And this kid said, well, I didn't see JC, but he was around a bunch of babes. So Chris is a little nervous. And this is when we get the 18 to 34 male scene where we have all these kids getting ready for the prom or the homecoming, whatever it's supposed to be, the formal. And we finally see some 80s tits.
This was so shoehorned into this movie. I mean, I'm not complaining because I always love to see tits in a movie, but it was just a long scene of girls taking a shower.
Yeah, we had a couple guys there. They were doing stuff, true. But we did have the girl. The girls always had to be in a shower, brother. This is the 80s.
Yeah, you gotta have an 80s shower scene.
I mean, come on now. It's written in the contract. Okay.
Yep.
So the guys are getting ready to knock. So Chris comes back to his. This one's a little interesting. So Chris finally goes back to his dorm and he finds a tape that says, "Listen to me." All right. So it's on the tape, which did not sound like JC's voice at all, but it was basically a tape saying, "Hey man, one of them got me. It went into my mouth. It's in my brain. I think I'm dead now." Okay. It's like I killed one with the match, so I'm pretty sure fire will kill him. So what I did was I went to the basement, okay, all by myself, and I locked myself down here, and I'm basically gonna, since I'm in the boiler room, I'm gonna burn them all out of me. And by the way, man, I really love you. I was like, oh shit, okay. So Chris starts freaking out. He goes all the way to the boiler room, the basement, and he gets there and he sees Chris is there. JC's on the floor. Well, Chris gets there and he sees JC on the floor with a bunch of melted slugs. So JC has sacrificed himself to kill some slugs and to get him out of them. So now we have the beta crew. They are going to be heading out to party with all the girls. All right. And they're wondering, hey, where's Brad? And they can't really find Brad. And they think he's like messing with some other girl, but Brad's not. Brad's actually secretly depressed because Cynthia blew him off, and he can't have a date to the homecoming. So he's drunk and he sees the dog, the same dog that was hanging out with the lady that got axed. He's like, "What's going on, dog?" And then the dog had a slug in him, and he slugged.
Yeah. He
slugged Brad in the mouth.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it seems to be that anytime any of the zombies sends a slug out, they die. But the dog keeps sending slugs out throughout the entire movie and never dies.
Well, It's the dogs and the creature. They have a better digestive system, so they don't.
Okay, fair enough.
They pop out the slugs
zombie
a lot
dog,
better. Yes. So now we can see that Brad is now a slug zombie creature.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And let's see. So now the beta crew, they're drinking on the bus too. All right, they're all drinking on the bus, and eventually the bus driver is telling them to all calm down and everything. He looks in front of him, he sees the zombie dog, he gets all freaked out, and he crashes the bus. So they're the frat boys go.
I also thought this was interesting too, because for some reason they like right when it switches to the bus crashing, the bus driver was actually like a dummy, like an animatronic thing, but there's no special effect, like his head doesn't explode or anything. So I'm wondering why they just didn't just show the actor, but whatever. I just thought that was funny and interesting.
So Chris goes to Cameron's place after Cameron was just trying to drink some whiskey and forget about all of his problems. And Chris is like, they got him. They got JC. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he tells him the whole story about JC. And basically they decided, like, okay, we need to go take care of these sluggish creatures. And we need to go get a flamethrower that we have at the precinct. So they go in there. They eventually convince this guy who's making a bunch of jokes the whole time to give him a flamethrower when he pulls a gun on him. So then we go back to the bus where it all crashed. The killer dog's all happy. He's like, hell yeah. Good job. And now we can see that this blonde girl from the mother's hen place opens the door, and we can see that zombie Brad. He has shown up. And just like, oh, Brad, very cute and everything. And then she calls for Cynthia to come down there. So now the whole beta crew that died on that bus crash, they're all zombies now, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They've all turned to zombies, sluggish creatures. Cynthia now talks to zombie Brad, and she was trying to, she was basically going to break it to him where we're not good for each other, and this is talking about the breakup. But before she can get all that, Chris is like, hey, get out of the way. And then Cynthia can suddenly see, Brad's face is about to open up with slugs, and then they shoot him, and then they flamethrower his ass. And then Cameron goes in there, goes inside the mother's place and tells them, they're all saying, oh, we're going to call the police. And he's like, yes, call the police. Call them now.
Call them now.
So now Chris and Cynthia, they can see that all the beta zombies have now shown up to the house. And Cameron cannot help himself, but he had to make a joke. He's like, hey, ladies, I got good news and bad news. The good news is your dates are here. The bad news are they're dead.
Haha. Which was used as the tagline for the movie.
Yes.
Which I think is appropriate.
Yeah, definitely. So Chris is now, he gave Cynthia the flamethrower outfit. Okay. Not really sure why. So he's going to be the one that's going to shoot him perfectly in the head, and she's going to burn him. And
well, originally he tries to give her the shotgun. He says, hold this, it'll make you feel better. But then he gives her the flamethrower for some reason.
Yeah. Maybe she's more inclined to do the flamethrowing.
Maybe.
So we get a bunch of scenes, very cool scenes of them killing these dorm guys and killing the slugs at the same time. We have Cameron inside the house, and he's killing a bunch of slug zombies too. He would kill them, and then he would use the old flammable can to kill the slugs during that. And we can see that Cameron did get cornered by a bunch of slug zombies. And then that same girl who got slugged by the cat, she is now turned into a slug zombie. And since it's written in Tom Atkins' contract of him being a badass, he kills all three of them, no problem.
No, absolutely not. Tom Atkins has no problems killing zombies.
No problem. Yeah, perfect. You come on. You should have got him on The Walking Dead and everything. He would have been the main star.
There would only been one season, The Walking Dead, if Tom Atkins had been on it.
Exactly. It'd been fine. All right. So this is we get a scene of Chris and Cynthia. They're getting cornered as well too in this little shack, and they start killing a bunch of the frat boy zombies. One of them, I like the scene where Cynthia, she put the flamethrower up next to the one's mouth and just like torched his ass.
Yeah.
And then she gets dragged out, right? And this is when we get the whole Chris is going to kill one of them by lawnmower.
Yes.
The lawnmower of death. Right there, brother. Pretty good stuff. I like this whole killing scene. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, there's a scene like that in Dead Alive, the Peter Jackson movie, but that came later, so he might have got that from this movie.
There you go.
Possibly.
There you go, brother. It all makes sense now. So they finally get inside. Or, no, actually, no, they start talking. It's like, okay, we got most of them, but they can see that a lot of the slugs have gone to the basement. So Chris asks, okay, what's in the basement? And Cynthia's like, oh, there's a bunch of boxes and science stuff. It's like, oh, somebody has a science experiment with a bunch of brains. I'm like, oh, shit. So Cynthia and Chris run through the house, and they tell everybody to get out of the house, get out of the house, get out of the house. And they run all the way downstairs, and they can see that Cameron is there with tape over his mouth, telling everybody to get away, telling them to get out of there, get out of there. And they're like, well, what are you doing and stuff? So basically, Cameron he can see that all the slugs are attached to the brains in the corner. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to get all the slugs to come to the brains. And then Cameron's going to like light them all on fire and blow the whole place up with him in there. And so he tells Chris and them to get out of there. They do. He winks. And he's pouring gas all over everybody, all over all the slugs. They all run outside. And they're doing a countdown. They're doing like 10, 9.
Yeah,
8.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
That was really cool because when Atkins first starts counting down, I was like, why is he doing a countdown? And then I was like, oh, it's so that they can get synchronized so he knows how long he has to get out of the house.
Yes. And then right when it gets to 1, Chris is like, detective, thrill me. And then the whole place blows up. Then after having Chris's detective friend Cameron blow up, after having his best friend died and killed and murdered by alien slugs, he now gets the girl and kisses her. And she says nice tucks. Then we have a burnt up Cameron walks outside with a cigarette, dies, and then 3 slugs escape to the Crest Ridge Cemetery. Then we have a random scene of the aliens finally looking for their experiment after like 20-something years. And we see a big ship looking around for a sequel that we kind of got in this other movie that we can't find. End.
Right.
Night of the Creeps.
Yeah.
Everybody. Very fun movie. I like
it. So you watched it on Prime, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I watched it. So the version that we saw on Prime was a different ending than the theatrical one.
Oh, interesting.
So what we saw was the original intended ending. The one that went in the theatrical version, the dog that caused the accident comes back, approaches Cynthia. She reaches down to pet it, and then the dog's mouth opens and a slug jumps out, and that's the end of the movie.
Oh, interesting.
So our movie, I think, is a lot better.
Yeah.
The ending that we actually watched. So this must be a restored version to the way it was originally supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, it both kind of like leaves it up for sequels in a way.
Yeah, true.
The other one just had the old shocking 80s ending.
Right. The jump scare of like, oh, it's still going on.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So.
But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about this? I mean, do you like this movie a lot?
I really liked it. I thought it was fun. Although, like I said, it was a very fun style horror movie. You know what I mean? Like, we actually have jokes that are funny. We have a really cool character, Cameron, with a crazy backstory, that takes control and is the hero at the end. We got the nerdy guy getting the hot girl. We got a bunch of frat boys blowing up, being zombie slug-like creatures. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, I thought, because it was supposed to be like a kind of 1950s horror movie, but it ended up being like the perfect 1980s horror movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it had like campiness, but it had like these really like, alien like creatures taking over and affecting. Like I said, it was like a lighter version of the Blob in a way. But it's a little bit more like goofy than that. So, but I thought it was fun. I liked it. Speaking of liking everybody, join us here next week as the Retro Blood continues From the Grave month, as we're going to talk all about dead and buried.
No.
Oh, which one? I forgot
We did dead and buried last week.
That's right. What was it called?
Burial ground.
We're going to be talking all about burial ground. Does this have some voodoo, ancient, sacred native land in it?
It does.
Okay. Well, there you go. Can't beat that. And then, of course, we'll finish off the month with Day of the Dead. The very classic.
The classic.
Style zombie.
Romero classic. Yeah.
So, but everybody, what song should we play? Everybody for the Alison on what should we play for everybody on the YouTube page or on the Facebook page?
I mean, what are you thinking? I think we should play Wanted Dead or Alive.
That makes sense for this one because these slugs are definitely wanted, dead or alive, brother. You gotta take.
Yep.
It. All right,
and there's
Yep.
Then there's both dead and alive in the movie. So yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
I think you got a little bit of both in that one. You know what I mean? So, but everybody, thanks for joining us here on the Retro Bud. We will see you next week. Alison, James Kline. See y'all later.
See you guys.